All right, we're going to give everybody a chance. Welcome to the PTC User Technical Committee open house. We're at with the CAD folks, and so it's going to take a few seconds to get everybody on and joined, and then we'll get started. All right, again, my name is Ron Watson. I'm the Director of Content for PTC User, and I'm very happy to have this honor of hosting this event for PTC User and the team. This is around Creo, CAD, model-based enterprise, data exchange and archive, Creo Elements Direct, customization, routed systems, ECAD, Sheetmetal, ID and surfacing, education and user experience, as well as CAE. So welcome to everybody, and I'm going to hand it over to the TC chairs to start. Go ahead, gentlemen.
Thanks, Ron. So welcome everyone to the PTC User Technical Committee Open House. As Ron said, we are going to devote this period of time to go over the different TCs that are related to the CAD products from PTC. But before we get started, we want to talk a little bit about what is PTC User. So who is PTC User? It is an independent voice for users of software produced by PTC. So we are the sole entity recognized by PTC as an official worldwide representative of its customers. It's been around for many, many years. The mission is for us to educate, advocate, and support. So that's our threefold mission. And we do a lot of this through these annual meetings with PTC, the events that we host, and the technical committees and working groups within the different technical committees. So how do we advocate? So we do have, the board does meet with PTC executives. So there is a time where PTC User meets directly with the executives at PTC to discuss issues and concerns and help drive direction of where the products are going. Through working groups. This is something that was started a few years back, where we get smaller groups of customers together where we focus on specific topics or tasks within the software. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the working groups that each of the TCs have been working with PTC on, and areas that we're looking to create new working groups moving forward. We also have our events. The next event that is planned is our winter event, which is in San Diego. This will be I believe our fourth event that we've had. These are really a good opportunity to meet face-to-face with other customers, with PTC representatives, and to kind of network and discuss on a more detailed level certain things about the software and how customers are using the software. And just kind of get to know the user community as a whole, and maybe learn some tips or tricks from other customers as well as PTC. And then the last one is through technical committees. And technical committees, we tend to meet once a month as a large group virtually, where we discuss topics, work with PTC a lot of times to try and generate an agenda. We may have report outs from the working groups. So this is kind of the general meetings that we have to communicate information between PTC User, and the customers and members of the different TCs. So the technical committees themselves, they are the voice of the customer. We work with PTC's product managers directly. They attend most of our meetings. Occasionally there's a scheduling issue, but they are involved in most of the meetings. They help us identify what the different issues are and help us drive to some sort of resolution. We identify and feed working groups. So again, this is where you may come with a concern or a question about something that you would like to see addressed. There may be a working group that comes out of the discussion, which is a smaller subset of the technical committees, which these tend to work well if you are focused and trying to solve a particular issue. We do help to fulfill other aspects. We present webinars, so a lot of times we will work with Ron and the board to get together with either vendors or customers that would want to present information on how they're using the CAD or using Creo or using PTC products. We try and answer each other's questions within the TC, as well as through the community where you can post questions. We do own or manage the agenda for PTC user in-person events. So we will work with the different TCs to schedule meetings to make sure that we're covering specific topics and we have the proper representation from PTC as well as the TCs. And we do help influence the LiveWorks agendas. There's a lot of work that goes into that where we will review not just the topics, but we may actually review the different content that's being submitted and help identify what would be a good fit for specific tracks for specific days. For example, last year we had the technical day that there were presentations flagged that we thought would be a better fit on a technical day and not necessarily in the general sessions. And we do a lot more within the technical committees. Each of the committees is led by a TC chair, and they are represented today in this meeting. So as we're going through the different TCs, you'll get a chance to hear from each of the TC leaders and get some information on what's going on. We are heavily involved working with committee members in PTC. We do a lot of liaison work between the customers and PTC and maybe help clarify or get people in contact with the right people. We help build the agenda. We do facilitate conversations, and we do a lot of bridging between the different TCs as we need to. So there's a lot of crossover between core Creo and model-based, or core Creo and Windchill and things like that. We identify area where working groups make sense, and then we communicate with the TC as well as the board, and we work directly with the board, and we meet with them, I think it's quarterly, to discuss any issues that we might have. So what are some of the tools used by the TCs? We do use the PTC user portal. This is where we have memberships. So if you want to join a technical committee, you would want to go to ptcuser.org. You will register, and then from there you can go and join TCs. This is what gets you on the mailing list for meetings as well as discussions. And you can join several different TCs. You're not limited to one or two. You can join as many as you would like to join. There's usually a short period where we will review and make sure that that you're getting into the right group and maybe answer questions about that. And then we have communication. We put files there. We put other things through there. The other is PTC Community. It is at ptc.com, and that is where working groups are currently hosted. So if you join a working group, communications and other things, information about the working groups can be found at the PTC community, as well as communication and notification boards. So this is a list of all the TCs. The ones that are in bold are the ones that there should be representation by a TC chair. And so let's go ahead and dive into the different TCs. And the first one we're going to talk about is Creo CAD. Creo CAD is the TC that I currently manage. I'm the TC chair for this. I have been the TC chair for about a year and a half, 2 years. So we do a monthly meeting, and the topics or part of our discussions are typically general usage. How does somebody use the software, UI and workflow? If there's questions on how the UI is going or where directionally, there may be a representation from PTC that comes in and explains what what they're changing in workflows or ask for feedback. We discuss model check. There is a working group currently for holes, talking about changes and improvements to the holes feature. Multi-body, that was a working group that was led up to, or was part of the development for Creo 7. The Creo 7 working group is closed. There's actually a new working group for Creo 8, where discussing what are some of the open gaps with the current multi-body and directions that we would like to see them go. Generative design, there are 2 working groups for that. Those are both being run by PTC. And that is, again, a lot of work went into generative design for Creo 7. They want to get into more detail and more information, so that's part of the information that is coming out of those. Family table data management, this is one of those working groups that bridges across multiple PCs. So it's being hosted from the CAD PC, but it actually bridges across to PLM. So we have representation from the user community for CAD and Windchill, as well as PTC representation for CAD and Windchill. And there are other things that come up just in general discussions. We are often a bridge community for many topics. So one of the things that was changed for this year is model-based definition is one of another large TC, that there was a lot of crossover between the different individuals that were involved. And so we've consolidated those to try and reduce the number of meetings people have to attend and to kind of drive a common topics. And then direct modeling, sheet metal, detailing, Windchill data management, we just kind of cross over into those different areas. And my email address is on the lower right if you have any questions and you would like to get more information on it. So the next is going to be model-based enterprise, and I'm going to hand that over to Ryan.
Hello, can you hear me, Matt?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, the model-based enterprise technical committee really started years ago as the model-centric TC and evolved into MBD and MBE. So I will just say before I kind of start talking about all this, a lot of the members of the MBD TC have been on it for quite some time. So definitely, if there's anyone on the call that is new to MBD, we could definitely use some new blood, some new ideas, new challenges. There's a lot of great stuff that happens there, but again, a lot of us, I think, on the TC have had the same conversations repeatedly over the years, and would definitely be great to have some new people joining. But in general, you know, same tools and principles that Matt talked about for the core CAD. We do focus on the Creo annotation capabilities, and you know, before it evolved into the MBE TC, that was kind of the primary focus. But we do also have members of the TC from all parts of the world, Europe and the US. So there is a lot of emphasis on the new and evolving standards coming out of ASME and ISO, and just working with PTC on identifying the gaps in the Creo annotation capabilities. And then several of the members of the TC are actually on some of those ASME and ISO committees that are you know, responsible for defining those new 3D annotation standards as well. So the second standards bullet point there is you know, CAD interoperability, and I know there's another whole TC focused on interoperability, but it is a big part of the MB model-based enterprise TC, as well as especially the companies who are actively engaged in those efforts, because you know, especially the larger companies working with their OEMs and supply chains, and even within some of the larger companies where they have several different CAD systems, right? If you don't have a drawing and you're you know, sending annotated models, you're not always going to be able to use that native Creo model. So those interoperability standards are extremely relevant in the MBE TC, in the MBE community. Also, you know, there's members of the TC that come from all different industries: aerospace and defense, electronics, heavy equipment. So a lot of the members share their processes, right? So, you know, the CAD's just a tool, but there's actual processes in manufacturing and quality, like CNC machining, manual machining, assembly technology. A lot of that has to change and evolve when you're switching from a drawing-based world to a model-based world. And then lastly, you know, that change to the standards and the tools and the processes pose some significant challenges to educate your people. So we touch on that and share those pain points with each other as well. And then, you know, one of the you know, the most attractive aspects of MBD is being able to reuse those models to automate downstream processes. So that's also a big part of what the members share with each other. And as a part of that, you know, the bottom half here is just some of the working groups that are active currently within the TC, the modeling process changes for MBD. You know, how do we go about actually documenting our model? You know, do we hold design reviews and bake in our MBD efforts with design for manufacturability reviews and things like that? We also have an enhancements for MBD working group, which is really focused on the pure Creo annotation capabilities and trying to improve those and address any gaps from a standards point of view. There's actually a working group that I'm leading, MBD annotation practices for patterns. That's an interesting one as well. You know, how do we define patterns in a model-based definition sense so that they can be machine readable and reused? There's also a new one being led by Michael Friedman, PTC's product manager. You know, they're targeting a future release to add the ability to create tables in 3D. Right now, it's a missing piece there. You can create tables in drawings, but you can't create tables in 3D. There's also another working group focused on GD&T Advisor, which is a very powerful authoring tool for GD&T that's developed by Sigmetrics, a PTC partner, and there's a lot of companies that really like it, but maybe having a difficult time adopting it across the board. So there's a group of people looking at what can be improved with GD&T Advisor to increase adoption. And then the last one is actually a working group that was finished last year, and there's a white paper there that hopefully when we distribute these slides, we can include that, which is just a good example of what can come out of some of these working groups. The white papers are delivered to PTC product management. They can review it and respond to it. What are their plans to address some of the issues? And in fact, if there is anyone on the call that isn't a part of the MBD-TC, PTC will be responding to the family tables for MBE working group in this month's meeting coming up in 2 weeks. That's it.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yep.
So next, we're going to switch over to Data Exchange and Archive, and that's Daniel.
All right, cool. So Data Exchange and Archive has been around a while. I've been with it for several years. As was mentioned, there's a lot of overlap in Data Exchange and Archive with MBD. In fact, for a while, the two were blended together. Data Exchange and Archive was a kind of a sub TC of model-based definition at the time. It split out again, but mainly this is core focused on data exchange, data translation, and long-term archiving of data, which is a particular concern for certain companies that have to keep long-term records and need to be able to access IP in the future. So again, sticking with focusing on the common formats, STEP, IDF, ODV++, lightweight formats, Creo View, JT, PDF, you'd even say, cross-discipline integration, so ECAD to MCAD, for example, other disciplines. Then you get more into the things that are not covered so much in MBD, which is 3D model repair and modification. So the stuff that you're seeing today where you can The traditional stuff you'd see, such as import data doctor and other tools of that sort to modify gaps and clean up gaps in services so they can become solid, so you can use them as a full solid, things like that. Feature-based translation. So the more intelligent features you see today, such as flexible modeling, where you can take a quote dumb solid and recognize features in it and change those features as if they were parametric. You can convert them to something that's more parametric kind of behavior. So those are two areas that I think are still progressing, still a lot of interest in. Long-term archiving and retrieval, again, is a big thing. Companies need to be able to access their data many years down the road, such as Kenworth, the company I work for. We have a requirement to be able to access our data 20 years after the last service life of a truck. So that's a long time to keep a record on the CAD files for a truck, for a product. And then of course, native translators. So going from Creo to CATIA to SolidWorks to, whatever. So those are the primary topics we cover. The TC itself hasn't been really active lately, but I want to make sure it keeps going. So a lot of the activities have been merged in with MBE, and which is great that the topics are still being discussed. But I think there is more to cover. I want to make sure that we get things going. We do not have any working groups going now, but we're definitely looking for ideas, and we'll make sure that any that need to be pursued get pursued.
Thanks, Daniel.
That's it. Yep.
The next is Creo Elements Direct. Not sure if we have a TC chair on the call for this one.
Hi, Matt. This is Frank Striffler. So Thomas Evansko from Jacobs is our TC chair in this area. And Thomas had a business emergency come up. He's not going to be able to be on the call today. I wasn't able to get a slide from him, but I told him I'd be willing to say a few words at least. So in this area, we don't have a whole lot of activity right now, to be honest. We've had some sessions at some of our face-to-face events, like the recent one in Scottsdale and the ones last year in Boston and the Carolinas. I don't know if there's been a whole lot happening in between as far as regular virtual meetings. And I don't believe there are any active working groups in this space either. But we'd certainly love to get some more people into the committee. Certainly love to ramp up those discussions and start to identify some working groups to move forward with. And I think there's several different areas where the community could add some value in the area of Creo Elements Direct. With the modeler itself, there's probably a couple different kinds of companies we could support. There are companies out there who have embraced direct modeling and use Creo Elements Direct as their primary tool. And certainly we want to support those folks. But there are also probably some folks who mainly use parametric modeling, but want to move beyond even the flexible modeling that's available in Creo Parametric and use a direct modeler for certain use cases. The classic one I always think of when I need an example in that area is defeaturing a model prior to analysis. So taking out rounds and certain diameter holes before you send it to a tool like ANSYS or Nastran or whatever analysis tool you're using, Creo Simulate, whatever analysis tool you're using. There's also the drafting capability within Creo Elements Direct and being able to support and streamline and better enable detailing of Creo Elements Direct designs, but also I know that some folks try to use Creo Elements Direct drafting as a standalone 2D drafter. We want to be able to support those use cases too. And then there's the, I don't know, PDM capability is the right term, but there's certainly data management capability built into Creo Elements Direct, the capability to track revisions and ownership and so forth, and making sure that meets the customer's requirements could be another focus here. So definitely some areas to work in. We'd love to see more people join up and start to get a regular rhythm together, have regular TC meetings where we could start to spin off some working groups. That's all I have for now. Thanks.
Thanks, Frank. Okay, next is customization TC.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
All right, cool. So my name is JD Felkins, and I'm a chairman of the chair on the customization TC. So what we basically do is to improve the Creo and Windchill API. We fill the gaps on the API. We basically go to PTC and tell them what we need to enhance within the API or what needs to be added to the API to perform customizations within the PTC products. For instance, we have the Creo API and JLink, and we might want to add some new functionality. And PTC will be communicating with us about that to improve that API. Secondly, we might want to tell PTC or inform PTC that the API might have an issue or problem with it, such as a certain function or class, and maybe a bug in it that we'd like to also inform PTC. So that's also part of the customization discussion as well. We also, for instance, want to go to the Windchill API and say, hey, these functions within this Windchill API is not supported. We'd like to be supported as well. So in the Creo API, there is Object Toolkit that we discuss using C++, Pro Toolkit using C, Object Java Toolkit, and also JLink, which is a free API. The Web Link using JavaScripting, another free API, and a VP API using Visual Basic.NET. So all these APIs within Creo we support and try to enhance the improvement of the documentation and also the functionality within the API as well. And talk about best practices of how to actually use certain functions within the API as well. You can go to the next slide if you like. So then we get into the Windchill API, and what we like to do is discuss the improvements of the documentation and the gaps within the documentation as well, the classes, and what can PTC support, because there's a lot of things within Java doc that PTC gives us within the Windchill API that's supported, but there is only maybe a certain percentage, a small percentage, maybe I want to say 25% or so, that's supported, that it's in that Windchill doc. What we like to do is discuss and say, hey, there is API out there that is needed to be supported. And we talk to the PLMs, with the product line managers, and find out if we can get that API supported. We put it back in the Java doc. For instance, we talk about the Spring Framework REST APIs. We talk about the form processor development, the API improvements of JavaScript. Not many people talk about that. We talk about the MVC table improvements and issues of the MVC table framework, and also the general API discussions around Windchill as well. Next slide, please. So we also talk about and discuss the best practices of how to use DevOps within the Windchill framework and also within the Creo API as well. We talk about, what's the best practices within the industry for the community. So what do we usually do? We usually talk about get a work group discussion on how to use repositories. Which one is the best one to use for the industry? Do we use Git? Do we use SVN? Do we use Atlassian Bitbucket? Do we use GitLab? We have these type of discussions. So we kind of figure out within the community, what is the best solutions for version controlling the customizations. Also, how to use Jira or other tools like Jira for tasking within your teams, your development teams. What's the best branching methodologies to use? There's lots of branching methodologies out there. We discuss among companies is what is the best techniques for branching for most companies and what they use and why. And we kind of write these down, we kind of document them so people in the community can better do the customizations for their application deployments. Deploying solutions using either pipelines or using Jenkins, or using Ant or all others. We talk about what's the best way to deploy customization as well in here, and also code quality and integration. So a lot of times in the customization community, not only talk about problems and issues and gaps to inform PTC, we also talk about on the other side of how to improve the coding, how to improve the customizations and application approach within the company, so we can actually use that to improve our development skills within the community. That's basically it. Oh, members task. Sorry, that's my phone. That's fine. That's right. So we encourage to have members participate in the working groups. And we had a few working groups in the past just to find out what is the best practices on customizations. We also encourage white papers, which is delivered by for PTC product line managers. The product line manager for customizations, for Creo customizations, is Mark Bishop at PTC. And I have a close relationship with him. We communicate with each other on the best practices and improving the API with a white paper maybe. And a working group, which basically members work together to find solutions and best practices. That's the last slide, right?
That's it.
That's it. All right. Thank you very much. And hope y'all can join my customization PC because I really need more participants in the customization TC to provide more feedback on the API and techniques. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is routed systems.
Alrighty, hello. So for routed systems, our TC typically covers about 3 different products from PTC. The main one is Creo Schematics. So if you're not familiar with Creo Schematics, this has replaced Pro Diagram from years ago, but it will go through and create intelligent 2D diagrams for a variety of different diagram types. We have block and wiring diagrams, which are typically used for cable assembly type drawings that will identify cables going between different boxes or units that you're going to go through and design. The circuit diagram is definitely more of an electrical type diagram that has all your electrical connections, but they're not necessarily defined by individual wires. And then the 4th type of diagram that schematics will support is for piping and instrumentation diagrams. This would be used for hydraulic, pneumatic, HVAC type systems where you're going to go through and still put through all the different components and all the different connections between them, except now it's not wires, it's more pipes. With Creo Schematics, we can take all that data and shove it into Creo Parametric. So for Creo Parametric, we have cabling. So we'll take the logical data from Creo Schematics, put into cabling, and everything that we identified in schematics, like a part number and a ref des for a connector, the part number and the ref des for wires and cables, all of that data comes across with the color of the wires, the diameter of the wire, the weight of the wire. And inside cabling, it will help you route the cables throughout the design. So it knows from schematics where you actually hooked up all your wires to each individual connector. So once you get into cabling that pulls those connectors in, it will automatically connect them end to end. And all you have to do from there is go through and define your path. The advantage of that is once you have your cables routed inside your 3D assembly, you now know the accurate length that your wires, cables need to be. You also know the weight of your cable assembly. And when it comes to an actual assembly that's kind of your next tire assembly, it helps you with the center of gravity as well. So for cabling, that's all for the block wiring and circuit diagram. For the piping and instrumentation diagram, this data goes into Creo Parametric piping. And so with piping, pretty similar thing. You kind of know your start and end points. This is going to go through and route all of your pipe, and then it will go through and break it up into logical or standard sizes of pipe. It can also go through and automatically assemble all of the proper fittings to connect all your pipes together, the elbows and flanges and things like that. Typically in this TC, we mainly focus on schematics and cabling. Not a whole lot of people get too involved with piping. Not sure why, but that's our focus is more on the electrical side. The TC is made up of quite a few different industries and companies. So we have Raytheon Technologies, Northrop Grumman, Caterpillar, Toro, Mercury Mercruiser, Train, and plenty more. Really, the last event we had in January, we had quite a few new faces at our TC meeting for routed systems, which is great. So the TC is beginning to grow. I typically host a meeting the first Tuesday of the month, every month, and at those meetings, they're an hour long. A lot of times we try to work with PTC for new suggestions and improvements to the tool, but our TC is a little bit smaller, and we get a lot of help from each other. So we can bring up an issue, we discuss it, we'll share screens, go through how to do things. And a lot of times at the face-to-face meetings that we have, at least in January, we will set aside a few hours of time for really nothing but live demonstrations from people, so we can get a good idea of how everybody are using the tools and see if there's a better way for people to do it. Everybody loves to give their opinion, so we have plenty of those, and it's a good time. So if you like, join the TC, and I'll get you added in and start inviting you on the Tuesdays. Thank you.
Thanks. Next is ECAD.
Thank you very much, Matt. This is Phil Lindberg. I'm with the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, and I'm the chair of the ECAD Technical Committee. Yes, I get this question all the time. ECAD really is part of the model-based enterprise. Note that our technical committee is a bit different in that the primary tool most of our users deal with actually are not PTC tools, but we're using ECAD tools that need to interface with PTC tools, most often Creo Parametric, and of course, Windchill. This means we kind of stick out a little bit, and we also have much more variety. There is not a single ECAD tool within our environment that particularly sticks out. We have a wide variety of tools we're trying to support in a wide variety of different environments. And I must add that when I'm talking about ECAD, for most of our users, we're primarily talking about printed circuit board ECAD. That is the portion of the electrical world that is most affected by environments that are using PTC's tools and databases. In particular, I'll note there's really two big areas that we concentrate. The first is ECAD-MCAD collaboration. This would be, for those of you who have spent time in this world, the space of IDF and IDX. And one of the things we've discovered there's a long and somewhat tortuous history of varying tools and standards. And as I've worked with different sites, a discovery that some people are working well with this, some people are not. In particular, discovering that the next generation IDX tools really didn't live up to their promise of completely replacing IDF. And it did not become the widely accepted replacement we had hoped for. We are hoping to use this TC to take problems like this, to raise the concerns through our user base to companies that include PTC and our ECAD vendors, to try to make the combined environments improve. And in particular, that shows up recently in our second concentration area, which is ECAD and PLM integration. I'm sad to say I have a long history with the vintage Windchill Workgroup Manager-based tools, and can share many frustrating stories of the limits of the tools and the limits of getting ECAD and PLM vendors to play nicely together. Of course, several years ago, PTC introduced their RESTful API interface approach to allow for a new generation of tools to really help solve some problems in this area. For those of you familiar with the details, this is how the XPLM company got involved with implementing these API interfaces. So in that regard, I'll note one of the things I'm trying to accomplish with this TC is to really rejuvenate our efforts. And I'm trying to use my own site and our current proof of concept integration to prove that, yeah, the new XPLM integrations can actually work and play well together with Windchill and, in my case, Mentor Expedition, though we are looking at other tools and other environments, as our membership is not strictly nor even majority Mentor Expedition. But we'd like basically all these kinds of efforts in the ECAD space to be shared through this TC, the good stories and the bad, to help PTC make better decisions, to help our users learn from each other, and to help really make these tools live up to their promise. In particular, at my site, the whole concept of the model-based enterprise is a big driver these days. ECAD has to be part of it, and Windchill is the key to that happening. So these vendors working together, it's a critical part of what we're trying to accomplish. And I encourage any of you who are interested in ECAD space to come join us in our work. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thanks. Okay, next is Sheetmetal, and that would be Joel.
So as the TC says, we focus on everything Sheetmetal related, whether it be creating Sheetmetal from scratch or converting from solid to Sheetmetal. We're a fairly small committee, maybe 10 members. And generally, we don't necessarily break out into working groups like the others do, because we're actually smaller and easier to manage. And basically, Sheetmetal topic for one company most of the time ends up being the same kind of topic for another company, just maybe a different priority in the functionality. So we're able to manage it without working groups. We work very closely with the PLM, Martin, and others within PTC to challenge at times, because some of them are in Europe, some of them West Coast, East Coast of the US, but we manage out okay. We also work everything that really affects Sheetmetal. We also try to make sure, or let me rephrase this, everything that is implemented into Core, we try to get implemented into Sheetmetal functionality at the same time, assuming it's applicable. And it goes the opposite way as well. One of the examples was recently with the new multi-body functionality. Really that started in the Sheetmetal committee, maybe 6 or 8 years ago or whatever. But then the more discussion and the more the news spread, we found out how many cross TCs and how the implication of everybody. So it actually got transferred over to Core and spread out from there. But we're always looking for new members. If you're not able to actually join the TC, we're always open to just emailing members, emailing me directly, and we will bring up topics for you as well if we can. That's all I got, Matt.
Thanks, Joel. Next is surfacing, and that's Terrie.
She might be on mute.
Terrie, are you there?
Yeah. Okay, now I'm here.
There you go.
All right, now I get to start over, which is always a good thing when you stumble at the beginning. So the Surfacing Technical Committee is back. I myself am new to the Surfacing Technical Committee, but not new to surfacing. I've been in CAD and specifically surfacing areas for 35 years. So I've gone from Bezier to NURBS and had a whole range of things in my career I've worked on. So I'm familiar with the aerospace, automotive, and industrial design needs and requirements to a certain extent. But I do need some help from the technical committee members. So how to participate is go to ptcuser.org and join the, it's called Industrial Design, so ID and Surfacing Technical Committee. And then we'll break out into working groups. And to get to a working group, you just join the PTCU community and ask to be a member of the working group. Only join if you can commit the time, because we're limited on the number of people. So we need people that can be totally focused and work with us on this. Our first working group is for style or ISDX. And for Creo 8, it's mostly improvements and enhancements for performance. They do need examples if we have them for performance problems, but that's what they want to focus on. And my plan is to add at least 2 more working groups, one for Creo for like variable section sweep, boundary blend, things like that, reverse engineering, or restyle, and then style. So we plan to add at least 1 working group for each of the products, and then we can see if we need to break those down into smaller working groups, we can do that. For anybody that's out there that was previously involved in the Surfacing Technical Committee, there's supposed to be a couple lists of backlog things that people are interested in. If someone could email those to me, that would help a lot. And my email is down there. I currently work at Solar Turbines. I think I've just discussed anything. I'm going to monitor the question and answer block. If anybody has any questions about the Surfacing Technical Committee, please post your questions up there and I'll try to answer them to the best that I can. All right. And back to you, Matt.
Thanks, Terry. Okay, and next is education and user experience.
Okay, thanks, Matt. So my name is Brian Morales. I am the chairperson of the Education User Experience Committee. I actually work with Sandia National Laboratories in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I've been a member of PTC user for, man, I'm going to guess 15 to 20 years, but this was my first stab at chairperson. I believe I've been in this role for probably a little over a year. So when I took this over, we really didn't have that many people on the committee itself, so I looked at that as an opportunity to maybe reform or reform the foundation, if you will, and determine, okay, what do we really want to do in this committee? So the committee has come up with so far is basically what we are is an advocate for PTC education development. So I think for a lot of people that I've spoken to over the last year, what they're realizing with the newer and newer people that are coming into the companies, just young people right out of school, I've heard people refer to them as the YouTube generation, the Google generation. They're basically going to other areas to find information on all PTC tools. And so what we're trying to do is help PTC maybe come up with better plans, if you will, to actually educate their users. And we actually have been in contact with the VP of PTC University, Terrie Riley, and Matthew Heidebrecht, and they've been generous in giving their time, along with Kim Maroney, and she's actually been awesome as well. But what they've done is actually showed us a lot of their new offerings within PTC University, and one of the newest things is an option called Creo Learn, which enables users to perform basically participate in web-based or instructor-led training, basically at the comfort of their own home, or in this case, mostly people working from home because of the COVID situation. So, but yeah, we've talked to them quite a bit about that situation. We're also an advocate for the PTC-sponsored user experience labs, which for some of you that have participated in LiveWorks over this last week, you may have actually had an opportunity to do some of this type of stuff. In fact, one of those things we actually initially thought we would actually create a white paper or a working group that basically discussed virtual UX labs. Well, this COVID situation actually kind of pushed that into high gear and kind of happened without really the use of the white paper, but regardless, we were fine with that because at the end of the day, it really was, I think, something that had to be done. We've also an advocate for PTC user webinars. So for a lot of our members, I'm not sure how many occur per month, but there'll be like 1 to 2 hour seminars on specific topics, Windchill topics, Creo topics, things like that. So we also participate in that. So as I mentioned before, we actually we're looking at potential white papers. I talked about the virtual UX labs. Another one is augmented reality-based training. Now, we as a group are still trying to figure out or define what that actually means, given what PTC's already done in terms of augmented reality. We've also discussed customer developed training. For example, customer plans for adopting ASME 14.4 or 14.5, etc. Lessons learned from software deployments, customer plans for adopting STEP. Those are basically just a couple of topics in terms of custom developed training. So again, what we're trying to do is just basically help or basically work with PTC to maybe just enhance, if you will, the education user experience with all PTC tools. So I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you. And next is CAE.
This is okay, I just need the bottom.
Hey, this is James Gardner. Good afternoon. Hopefully my audio is working all right.
Yep, we can hear you.
Fantastic, fantastic. So CAE group is a group that's been quiet for a while. We just are starting back up. We started back up in late 2019, and I'd argue still on the launch pad through much of competing work at work for me these days. So as with the other TCs, this is focused on computer-aided engineering, computer-aided analysis. So go to PTC user and you can get to the CAE technical committee and I can add you in once you have an account there. So straightforward, easily done. So what is kind of our next step? Our next step is looking at working groups like TBD at this time. As you've seen through the deck here, there are a couple generative working groups already over in the main CAD group. And then also the additional pieces of software that are kind of going along the simulation vein that are getting integrated into the Creo toolset with PTC and with ANSYS are Creo Simulation Live, which has just had a second version of their solver come out lately that's in Creo 7 and a maintenance version of Creo 4. And the new Creo ANSYS functionality, which I think is going to be available as a UX lab demo in this virtual LiveWorks environment we're in. So those are the thoughts for working groups, and welcome to hearing more from folks to see if what makes sense. And going forward, what do we want to do with those working groups? Well, right now we're fairly quiet, so the next thing we want to do is go forward with more meetings. At this point, I've had more that I've had to cancel due to either lack of attendance or my own double or triple booking. So I think we're going to go to a quarterly cadence. That makes a lot more sense, and want to have at least one working group going by the close of the year. And again, my name is James Gardner, james.gardner@lmco.com to get a hold of me or find me through joining the CAETC and communicate with me through PTC user. So we're small right now, but we're looking forward to getting off the launch pad and getting some good coordination with PTC, where we have a couple involvements where we're talking with Todd Kraft, Nelson Caperton, and a few other folks, and looking at expanding that further, expanding that with your help. Looking forward to it. So Matt and PTC user team, thanks for giving me some time to present. I appreciate it.
Thanks, James. Okay, so that concludes all of the TC membership or leaders, chairs talking. So these are some helpful emails for users. There are TC chairs. We put our emails on our slides. But if you need to get a hold of the director of technical committees, that would be Frank. Frank Striefler. Director of working groups is Mayan. He is involved to make sure that the working groups are functioning and that we're making progress and helping us poke PTC as we need to. Our president is Margie. She's been doing this for about a year, I believe. Our PTC user portal, it's Dan, Glenn, and Preeti are the two that you would want to contact. And if there's anything for the community, that would be Jamie Lee Bunton at PTC. Just as one important reminder is that one of the things you'll notice is that all the individuals, with the exception of the PTC community manager, we are all non-PTC employees. So we do a lot of this as volunteer work, or we do all of this as volunteer work. And we are a voice as a customer to PTC. We are not PTC and we do not represent them. So that's one of the important things to understand, is that we are independent from PTC and we are not part of PTC itself. So with that, I want to say thanks to everyone, and we will open it up if there are any questions that you have.
So Matt, we do have a question on the board from Michael. Who was the point of contact for the user experience and education TC?
It's Brian Morales.
Okay, Brian, that's what I thought. Good, good.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
For those of you on as attendees, please use the Q&A box to ask your question. If you feel you need to ask a live question, we can make you live. I just have to, you would need to raise your hand and then I can switch you over to be live. But if not, if you're comfortable with just typing it in, we'll be glad to take your questions. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions come up. I'm not seeing anybody else raise their hand. Okay, I think we're good. Matt, you want to close it out then?
Sure. Just again, thank you for everyone that attended. We are looking for new individuals to join these different TCs, and if you are interested, please do reach out to the TC chairs if you have questions. We are really looking forward to what 2020 brings and how we can improve PTC software. So thanks everyone for attending, and I hope you have a great rest of the day and rest of your week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Excellent job. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you.